Welcome to The Secret Truth. I'm George Butler, and I have an author with me, Sarah Whalen, and she's got quite a project underway at this time, and she's affiliated with Trine Day Publishing, Chris Milligan's publishing house. And welcome to our program, Sarah Whalen.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh, I'll tell you, we talked briefly before this interview earlier in the afternoon, and she sort of filled me in a little bit, and so I'll be asking her to really explain some of these projects that she has underway. What are you doing right now? What's your goal in writing and getting ready to publish some books? What you're doing? What are you doing?
Well, I have the first book coming out in March of 2018. It's called Royal Vengeance: The Assassination of Princess Diana and the Royal Cult of Human Sacrifice. And mostly I study the crash. I deal with the 3 inquests that were held, and I look at all the facts. It's my determination that Princess Diana was definitely assassinated, and the reasons for it are complex, but basically there were 3 reasons. One was that she had given an interview to Andrew Morton, and it was published as a book called Princess Diana, Her True Story, and it was a best-selling book. It was very critical of the royal family, and especially Prince Charles. The second reason was that she had given a television interview to the BBC Panorama where she directly criticized the Queen, and also, her interview was devastating to Prince Charles. She basically said he was unfit to be king and that he should stand down, and that she would take over the education and training of Prince William, their son, and in effect she would act as regent. I think the royal family, at the time of the BBC interview, that's when they made the plan to definitely murder her. It had just gone too far. And then when she was going to win a Nobel Prize for her work in landmines, I think the royal family felt they had to do the murder before the prize would be announced in October. So they killed her in August because she was in Paris, and it was much easier for them to do it there than in the United Kingdom.
She was a very popular princess, was she not?
She was. She was enormously.
And this landmine, she really worked hard at that and went overseas on a number of trips, did she not?
She did. She went most particularly to Bosnia and also to Angola. And although the fields have been cleared of landmines before, it's still a considerable risk to walk even through a cleared area.
Right.
And she did this.
Because there might be one in there they missed. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And she really drew attention to the issue of the danger of landmines. Even after wars are over, countries really suffer because the mines can't effectively be removed very easily, and they plant thousands of them. So she drew attention to this, and she was petitioning all the countries of the world to ban interpersonnel landmines completely, which of course Great Britain was not in favor of that. But she had gone to the United States and she talked with Clinton, and Clinton at the time agreed that he would ban interpersonal landmines. It was really quite remarkable. At the same time, she was angling for a larger role because she would be divorced very soon. So I think she still wanted to be on the world stage, and the landmine work was
When she wrote these
important.
critical things, was she still married? Was this?
Yes.
At what point in life was it at the time that she wrote some of these critical
the
interviews and so forth?
The book Diana, Her True Story, started before the separation.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
And she basically conspired with Andrew Morton.
But did she deny that?
She did initially. Yeah. She denied it. She denied it up until her death. It was only after her death that Andrew Morton produced the tapes and finally admitted
that she did.
Yes.
She was interviewed, and those were her first person.
Right.
Okay.
The royal family knew, though, that she had collaborated with Morton. I mean, they were sending Dr. James Colthurst, who was a mutual friend over to interview Diana at Kensington Palace. I don't think anyone was fooled by Coulter's going over. And she had a little tiny tape recorder, and she would give the tapes to Coulter's, and he would transport them back to Andrew Morton. I think the palace knew all along, but they did confront her on it. She denied it, and they said, well, if you deny it, you don't want this book coming out about you, so will you make a press complaint, and will you file a civil lawsuit? And she was very canny. She completely avoided doing that, but it didn't matter. They already knew it was her.
Well, also, those are very interesting set of facts, and you also in our earlier conversations off camera and so forth, you displayed your knowledge in the Paris, the tunnel and the road system and so forth. How many hours did you spend on just studying the layout over there? It was just hundreds of hours or dozens of hours? I mean, you have put some time in on this so far.
Yes. The second inquest was the Paget report. The first inquest was done in France, and very little was known about it because the French have a lot of secrecy laws. So most of that inquest was never released. But Scotland Yard did its own inquest that was published as the Paget report. I read the entire Paget report and studied it because there were a lot of errors in the Paget report that were very obvious to me. I'm a trained attorney, and I do a lot of things like accident analysis and witness interviewing.
And so you drill down with your experience in the law and investigation, for your clients and so forth. You've learned to really analyze things in detail and flesh out some problems or questionable set of facts or even lies or possible lies or fibs or whatever.
Yes.
In the law,
did.
right? You run across a lot of situations.
And I was really geared for it because when I saw the BBC Panorama interview, I remember it was 1995. I think it was the Friday after Thanksgiving. I watched it with my family. And I was always interested in the royal family. And my family said, well, what do you think? And I said, she won't last a year after making these accusations and saying what she said. And I thoroughly expected her to be killed within a year. And I made a joke. I said, I think they'll probably kill her in an automobile accident.
Really?
Yeah, because it's very difficult.
You actually had a premonition almost. They're
limited in how they can kill people. You can't openly murder people. It's more complex.
Well, now, getting back to your experience and your studies over a number of years,
right.
And you started studying the world system, is that right?
Yes.
And you started studying the power structures and different groups and so forth, and membership or secret societies or non-secret. And so you've come up with some very, very insightful things. Is that right?
Yes. Well, my background is in law. I have 2 law degrees, a JD and an LLM, and my specialization was always in international law, and that involves a lot of study of Western history. So I got interested in the societies that way and the power structures, especially after World War II. So I was always interested. And my family would joke with me. They would say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist.
That would be my next question.
Right.
Were you growing up, were there discussions like this in the family or not? They were not into these things?
Well, I will say this. I would say that I discussed them, and I felt very free to do that.
Right.
But
they weren't always going along with some of this, right?
No, they
were typical Americans that
Absolutely.
were not really into some of these different things.
Right, but I will say this. My mother was a child psychologist.
Okay.
And she was a Jungian, and she was intrigued by my interest.
Okay.
And she would always buy me whatever book I requested.
So she encouraged you in some of this. Oh, okay. Well,
she did.
That's good. How about any siblings? Any brothers or sisters or anything?
I have 3 brothers.
Okay.
And
what do they think about some of your studies or some of your...
it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I used to take a lot of heat from them. We're each a year apart. I'm the oldest.
Okay.
I have...
So you had these little brothers, right?
I have these little brothers.
These little knothead brothers, right?
They're highly, highly intelligent, but they used to really, beat me up. I mean, we're a political family. We're all pretty verbal.
Right.
They would say, oh, you're crazy, you're nuts. And then 2 years ago, my brother, Paul, pulled me aside and he said, he said, everything you're saying about the Kennedys and Oswald, I finally understand, because on his own, without any prompting from me,
he went out and studied something.
He bought the book Dr. Mary's Monkey.
Oh, yes.
And he said, this is the most amazing, eye-opening thing I've ever read. And then he went and he bought me and Lee. And so I wouldn't say he's completely
Maybe you have an
around.
ally now in the family.
I think I do.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah, I know what your experience. I had someone in the family who called me a nutcase one time, but that's all right.
That's right. It took 50 years, but they come
I got
around.
broad shoulders. I can take it. So in your studies, you've actually used some of your law experience.
Yes, in fact,
and I guess that comes about before the research, right? And
Yes.
and trying to discern and separate facts from fiction or whatever, or invention, or
right. When my son was born, I wanted to work not as a lawyer. I wanted a more easygoing job, so I became a research assistant to Professor Piero Glaheses at Zeiss Johns Hopkins University. And he wrote a lot of books. I mean, he's very left-wing.
Right.
He's almost a communist. But he wrote books about the CIA in Guatemala,
Oh, I see.
the CIA in Cuba.
Yeah.
Right. And so we did a lot of research, and he was meticulous with the documents. We filed Freedom of Information Acts, and he sent me to archives all over the country. And it was doing that work for about 3 years where I really learned to use documents and how to comb through documents and put together theories from the documents, back everything up with as many facts as you can find, and then try to check the documents against other facts.
Right.
It is a long process.
So your book, in this beginning book, is going to be as factually based, of course, as possible.
Yes.
And what you laid out earlier to me, and of course we don't really have time to go into that detail, and actually you need a diagram to explain it well, and we don't have that capability right now. But you really drill down into the site plan, the traffic patterns there, and describe to me a very, very intricate, accident that was contrived.
It was definitely contrived. It didn't take too much to pull it off, but it had to be planned. They had to make the car go into the Alma Tunnel. They did that by making sure that the exit ramps were blocked. They knew where Dodie and Diana were going. They were going back to Dodie's apartment.
So they knew where they were headed.
Right.
And they had time to set up these blockades or cars just across, stopped in the middle of a street where they had to turn a certain other way.
Correct.
So they directed them into a certain direction.
They couldn't turn off. Ordinarily, they would take an exit ramp to put them on the Champs-Élysées. From there, it would have been a straight line to Dodie's apartment. There wouldn't have been any chance of an accident.
Now, let me ask you this. You know the city of London.
Yes, I do.
And you know the power of money there, the money power that they have?
Yes.
It's very great, isn't it?
It is. It's enormous.
And so that seems to me that it may enter into some of your studies of the secret societies and so forth, does it?
Yeah, well, certainly secret societies, many are London-based, although I don't really think, their allegiance is not to nation states anymore. They're sort of super agencies.
Internationalists.
Right. Places like London.
Transnational corporations that they own or manage or whatever.
And they need a certain amount of cooperation with the government to function wherever they are. Over the years, they've achieved this in England with Parliament. It's just like any place. You have a certain number of people in your pocket who are going to do your bidding. I don't think these people understand even who they're dealing with or what they're doing. To them, it's just politics.
I've walked the streets of the city of London, and I sat down with the director at the time, Lynn Swan, of the Tavistock Institute. They're on Tabernacle Lane, which is on the edge of the city. It's a few blocks outside. And so I got the feel over there in 2006 what the city was, and I've studied this stuff for several decades anyway. So that's what will make this book very, very interesting. and I feel that I could only highly recommend it now but it will be published
It's supposed to come out in March of 2018 with Trine Day.
Okay. And you're intending after publishing it to go on some kind of a tour of some kind?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to, of course, sell the book, answer questions about the book, give lectures. I know the book will come out for some criticism. I'm quite happy to go to universities and meet that criticism head on. And I think it's a good process. It's part of a genuine democracy to have these kinds of give and take discussions.
Okay, now let me ask you this. Right now, do you have a website that people could send things to you? Maybe if they know about any of this? We're
creating a website, but right now I can be reached through Trine Day and Chris Milligan.
So go to Trine Day with any questions that our viewing audience might have. Go to Trine Day, and he'll forward on or give you an email there that you can be contacted. And I would suggest that anyone that knows anything about this worldwide, anywhere, contact you and
that would
discuss
be great.
that with you, because it's a big world.
It is.
And there's people out there that have insight, that have been members of different institutions and societies and different things, that might want to pass on some inside information to you.
That would be wonderful.
Huh?
I'm all ears.
But Sarah Whalen, thank you for being with us this evening. And we're at the JFK conference in Dallas, Texas, and she's attending it and helping out here and there. And boy, I tell you, I'm excited about your different project here. And you've got this first book scheduled to be published, and possibly two more.
Yes, there was so much information. Initially, when I wrote the book, it was about 700 pages, so it's much too long.
Right.
So what I did was I broke the book into two, and then I actually, there's a third topic. And the second one is going to be called The Secret Inner Circle.
And there you're going to propose some group possibly that had an interest in her assassination.
More than one group, and I identify them. Some of them are new, but others have been around for many centuries, even 1,000 years, and I identify them.
Oh, I see. So
they
in this
still have
book
active
called
members.
The Inner Secret Circle, or
yes,
like that, you're going to be going into more detail of. And now we discussed also something earlier about killing of the kings.
Correct. That's the ritual.
Now I'm just tacking this on at the end of this, but it was sort of interesting that I've discussed the JFK assassination in that way before, and you have too, have you not?
Right. Since ancient times, there is a practice. I mean, it's practiced all over the world, where the king was killed. It used to be about every 8 years. Some anthropologists put it with the rising of the planet Venus, which, if you know anything about Illuminati lore, Venus is much discussed.
Okay, so this is an Illuminati type of...
well, it didn't...
Possibly, yeah.
It's old. I mean, yeah, it's very, very old. And I think people in the Illuminati, they do seize on rituals. They adopt certain rituals as their own. But the killing of the kings is an ancient thing. It was done to fertilize the land. And it was thought, and
from a tribal viewpoint, I picked it up as maybe a king they had did not bring them rains.
Right.
So there's anger there with the rain god, and so the people said, we need a new king.
Well, in England,
that will be blessed by the rain god or by the gods.
Well, in England, they would say that the luck had run out. There was a big belief in the luck, and that was to crops, to fertility of the land, to the weather. I mean, if you look at Anne Boleyn, when she knew she was going to be executed, one of the threats she made to Henry was that it would not rain in England if they executed her, which of course substantiated accusations of witchcraft. But I think she was really referring to a much older process. And I think in England, this process had gone on for many centuries, where the king was regularly killed. And even the Normans, when they invaded, they had to adopt this concept, because you see, William I, he executes Waltheof. What they started doing was executing substitutes. They wanted to keep on ruling. It's very nice to be king, but they're aware of the rituals, so every 8 years they would choose someone else. Henry VIII did the same, and I think there are two lines of what I call willing families who supplied these victims. And I think that Anne Boleyn's family was one, and Catherine Howard's family was another. The Howards are still a very well-known aristocratic family, but the day before Henry VIII died, his last act was to kill yet another Howard. Henry Howard, a young, very virile guy who was probably more royal than Henry VIII himself. And his father survived. He was supposed to be executed the next day, but then Henry VIII died. But you also see executions during the time of Elizabeth. So you can pretty much bet that every decade or so, someone's either going to be executed or there's a very strange death that can't be explained by normal circumstances. And as a lawyer, and I did criminal law for a number of years, I know how to analyze those cases.
Well, this is what our viewing audience has to anticipate in the reading of her books that are soon to be published, the first one. And I want to thank you very much for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
And thank you for all your hard work and research.
Thank you so much.
Okay.